Hello, and welcome to this screencast on the communication app Remind. Remind is a fairly new digital platform. It's an easy, safe, and recordable way to communicate with students and families, and it really is made specifically for teachers. So we're going to investigate Remind a little bit today and talk about how it may relate to some UDL properties. First, an important kind of background on why you should use Remind in your classroom. Mobile device communication is key in this day and age. This data taken from the Pew Research Center shows that our students' families have very high ownership rates of mobile devices. And as you can see, a lot of them are not just cell phones that will receive text, but they are smartphones as well. And if you can imagine this number here for 100% for ages 18 to 29, if you're teaching elementary or middle school, those are going to be some of your parents and your students as well if you're teaching high school. Smartphones are also how families connect. Data shows that Americans are increasingly dependent on smartphones to access the internet. Although this doesn't look like very much in this graph, about a 20% rate, it's going up every year, and as you can see generationally, it increases as well. Basically what this is saying is that people aren't just using broadband or dial-up to connect to the internet. They're using their smartphones or their tablets or other kinds of mobile devices. So, in this world, how can we best communicate with students and home? Oftentimes, letters sent home and even email communications may go unseen. Thus, communicating via a mobile device is key. And this is why Remind is great, because it can help fill in this gap and helps teachers to meet students and families where they are in this kind of communication landscape. So Remind works across devices, which is important. As I said earlier, people are increasingly using mobile devices, whether it's a smartphone or a tablet, to access the internet. And so Remind really needs to work on multiple platforms and also work on desktop. For the basics, and we'll go into this more later, teachers organize students into classes, and they basically send a unique code to parents or to students in the classroom, either through a PDF, through an email, or a text invitation if you have individuals' phone numbers, or you can even write the code on your whiteboard and have your students connect that way as well. Teachers can manage these classes. They also manage different messages and chat rooms, either from an online account operated through a desktop app or your own phone. You can create class-wide or one-on-one messages. You can also manage things like fundraising, field trips, and other major events and activities. And to bring up UDL and how this relates to Remind, this is going to be kind of an interesting comparison and way to mesh these together. I still think that UDL principles hold in Remind, especially since through each of the platforms, engagement, representation, and action expression, all Remind does is just make your communication with families and with students more accessible. So sometimes you'll hear me talk about how for example, in the engagement platform, it's a novel way to communicate. So that will perk students' interests and parents' interests. But another way that I might talk about it is from the teacher's viewpoint, how it's good UDL for them. If you look at action and expression, it's basically an assistive technology if we consider the way we usually contact parents through letters or through calls home, which may be ignored. This is yet another way that I can reach my parents. So we'll talk on each of these a little bit more as we move into Remind, but why don't we do that now? Okay, so I've pulled up a web browser, and I'm just going to go to the URL and type in www.remind.com. So it's going to take me to the landing page, where I totally recommend you go if you have more questions about this and learn more. They have really user-friendly videos and other types of screencasts so you can understand if it's a good fit for you. And then if you want to create a profile, go ahead and sign up. But I'm going to log in with my existing profile, which I use for my church youth group. Okay, so I'm here at the login page. I'm going to click login with Google, like I said, and choose the account that I want to use. This way, like I said, you don't have to remember a lot of passwords. It's all integrated very well. So what we're going to do is just kind of walk through the desktop version of Remind. Like I said, this is also available on your smartphone, and I also have this downloaded on my smartphone. However, I actually like the desktop capabilities a lot better. And I'll show you some of this in more specific detail why I like the desktop better. So as you can see, it's greeting me. Good evening, Miss Meredith H. And this is a name that you will actually create for yourself once you create a Remind application. Right now, I just have one class, CTK Youth. This is my church's youth group, like I said. I have a Messages tab, a tab with all of the people who are in my class in this case, and an Activities tab. So I'm going to walk through each of these and kind of talk about some different functionalities. So here in the Messages tab, I can see announcements, well, what they call announcements. These are messages that have gone out to everyone. So I can scroll through them here and see all these previous messages that I've sent to everyone. They really are like announcements in that you don't see any reply on this other side, right? I also have quick actions. If I want to quickly group message, which will just really open up this area because that's what this is, create an activity, or contact individuals as I move through. As I said, although you can clearly see these people's names, their identities and their contact information is still protected. There's no way if I was to click on anything to show you any kind of information for these individuals that you would get email addresses or you would get text messages, which is actually really helpful too if you want to operate this from your classroom. If you were to leave your classroom with this on your desktop and maybe a student or administrator saw this, they wouldn't get any information besides the actual content of your messages. All of the actual contact information is protected from them, which also means that all of these individuals don't have your contact information. They don't have your real cell phone number, and which I really like. I can use my cell phone to communicate with them, but they don't actually know my number. So what I'm going to show you now is just a quick way to create a message. So I'm going to click on this button here, which obviously is my handy dandy little pencil and notepad to write a message. I can choose whether I want it to be a class announcement, like I said, that you see here on the right side, a group conversation, which will be within certain individuals that I create, but I can also make this class-wide, an individual message with a person, or an activity. We're going to start with a class announcement. So I select this, and it's showing me that it's going to everyone, and I can add people in here as well. So this is one of the places that I think UDL really comes into key here, is when you're creating an announcement. As you can see, my announcement can only be 140 characters. So let me type something in. Okay, so I have something typed in here, a message that would go out to everyone. Here I can select Translate, and it will give me many different languages to choose from. So say I had a couple of Spanish speakers in my classroom. Instead of sending a class-wide message, I might choose a group message that is a group just composed of my Spanish-speaking families. So I write my message like I've done, and then I would go down and find Spanish, and it will change my message perfectly. Hola a todos, espero verte pronto. And that's actually pretty correct. I've taken a lot of Spanish, and it works other ways too. If I was to write this first in Spanish, and maybe I wanted to send this to a, let's say, Korean parent. I lived in Korea for a while, so I could check this too. 모두 안녕하세요. Yep, that's exactly right. That matches the translation better than Google Translate even does. And I can take this and turn it back into English as well. Let's see how it comes out again. Yep, perfect. Hello, everyone. Hope to see you soon. Another way in which I can vary the representation of Remind for my students or parents along the UDL guidelines is I can upload photos, videos, or files. I can add visuals to my message that they would receive as well. So why don't we upload a file? You can drag and drop, or you can choose from your browser, which I'm going to do here. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm just going to choose this final flyer. How about that? And this flyer will, I'll see, loads in right to the bottom of my message. I've shown that I've only done 80 things, so I can send it away, no problem. I can also schedule it to go out at a certain time, obviously a certain date, and at a certain time of night. But I don't want to do that, and like I said, I don't want to send anything to these people, my youth group either, but you get the gist. It's pretty easy to do. So obviously I can just X out of that and my message won't send. Perfect. Let's talk about the activities. So if I wanted to go here and choose an activity, I want to highlight these for you because the group conversation and individual message really operates in the same way. There's 4 different activities I can choose from Remind: sales, fundraisers, field trips, and events. So essentially, I can create another way in which I'm organizing and helping my parents and students to organize using that executive function to prepare for a big event. Let's choose field trip. I could give it a name. For example, Day at the Aquarium. You know what? I'm going to say that. Day at the Aquarium, if I can spell that right. Okay. Then next. Now the basics. As you can see, it really walks you through every step. I didn't take any kind of special training on Remind. I just used it and I picked it up. So I'll choose a date in the future to go on our aquarium trip. How about here when all grades will be in? I can also choose a start time and an end time. Let's just leave it there. And I can even put a location in. Let's go to the Baltimore Inner Harbor Aquarium. Okay. Then I'll select next. How much does it cost? Now, I haven't set this up myself, but you can collect money through Remind. You can basically, like it says, link it to either your account or your school's bank account, which is another way in which this would be a really good platform for school districts or individual schools to use for their entire student body and all of their teachers. So a day at aquarium is actually pretty expensive these days. Let's say it's $45. And I can either select or unselect using Remind to collect funds for this activity. I'm going to deselect this and just make it like a notification for students to bring that money with them. Now, I can go down here and you see that it's pre-selected for me CTK Youth because again, I was here in CTK Youth when I created this message. But maybe I don't want it to go out to everyone. Maybe I know Kelly's not going to be able to come and I wouldn't want her to get an invitation to something that I know she can't come to. I can deselect this and go through and select certain people that I know can come. I can also add every class I own. If I have all the same civics courses and we're planning a trip to the capital, I can add all of those civics courses at once. So now I'm ready to add a message. I'll make sure I have everyone who I want on, and I'll choose next. Here I can create my message. Now, something you will always have to select when you send a message out to anyone, actually. The people responding to this activity are 13 years or older. This is for any fundraiser, event, or any of those 4 activity choices. You have to be able to select this. But I can deselect this. Allow participants to reply in the group conversation. I can turn this off and make sure that participants are not are not communicating with each other on the group conversation. Instead, they would only receive messages I put into the activity. I can preview it. Let's do that. It'll show you here exactly how it's going to look. And then here, where I'm actually going to track my students' responses, and I'll show you some of these with ones I've done. I'll see a number of people with yeses, with maybes, with nos. I can even, like I said, sync it to my Google Calendar, which really increases my ability to plan, track, be on top of everything. And honestly, it's a different way to kind of view this information as well. So you could think about it in terms of a translational sense for your language, part of the UDL representation. I'm not going to send this one though, so let's X this out and I will say yes, close out of activity. Let's go look at some previous activities. So here you go is the location where I can verify and add my bank information if I did want to collect money through a fundraiser. But let's look at a past activity I planned, Shrove Tuesday. So if I click on any of these, it will show me who was invited, who was a yes, who was a maybe, and how many people didn't respond. It'll also show notes about people who have sent me specific messages or sent messages to the activity board. And I can scroll down and see everybody here. This little blue icon here is a quick jump for me to message just this individual person. You'll see these a lot of times next to names. All it means is if I quickly want to write a message to Nina, I can just select this blue box here. Okay. I can also check out more of my details, see the original message, my day, my start time, the location, all of that information. And I can, another great thing about Remind, I can print out this activity. I can print everything out about this with messages as well, which can be really helpful in preparing for parent-teacher conferences. So let's go look at people, and I will go and show you a message I've had one-on-one with someone. So let's choose someone good. Let's choose Chris. So here I can see every message he's received and he's written back to. So if you go back, you can see when he joined. Here it says this beginning of your message history. Everything that's on the right side are the things that I sent. And as you can tell, it has that icon and CTK Youth. This was a class-wide announcement. But he replied to the class-wide, to an individual message I sent him here. He replied through his cell phone, but I can view it all here. As you can see, we're talking about bringing eggs. Here are some more major messages. So the interesting thing about this is that all of these individuals, when they receive a class-wide message, it will just show up to their regular text messaging thing and they can respond on their own or otherwise. So it really allows a lot of variability in your platform. That's really all I have to cover on Remind. Like I said, there's a lot of really interesting ways in which this platform can meet a lot of those UDL requirements. As I said, teachers can choose whether they want to send messages out from their computer or from a smartphone. Parents can choose if they want to receive them via text message, or they can receive all of these messages as emails to their inbox. I can attach visuals. I can attach video to any message that I send. And really, this is just another way that I can communicate with people and they can communicate with me. And if you tie it into some other major goals you have with technology in your classroom, you'll see that you can really use this to help parents be aware of how their students are doing towards major class goals. You could do something like create a weekly reminder that goes out and directs people to your Google Calendar or to your class-wide website. If you have a test coming up, you can send this out to everyone, either students or parents, with a link to some review sources online. That would be a really good way to use Remind. You can also use it as a tool for kind of self-reflection. As I said, I really plan to use Remind in coordination with my final project, which is the Reflection Corner, which uses Seesaw. This was going to be a way, Remind is going to be a way that I can keep my parents abreast of my students' progress towards their non-cognitive goals. And this is just going to be a much more easy, accessible, honestly friendly way to interact with my parents. Now, of course, I'm going to have people who will never text back. I have them here who never text back. But it's just diversifies the way that I can reach out to those parents and really fulfills a lot of those UDL goals of making things accessible to everyone. So I hope you enjoyed that screencast, and I definitely recommend that you try out Remind.